What a week it's been. I'm gonna light some sage. Just sage my ass. It's been a crazy week, guys. I'm sure it has been for all of you too, right? Who doesn't have a story right now? Oh my gosh, I'm lighting some Palo Santo. It smells really good. Cleans out the air. Set my intention for a great day. I hope that this podcast finds you all in great spirits. Thank you so much for hopping on another phone call with freedom. I am your host, Sarah Jane. Thanks for showing up in my corner of the world where we talk the universe. I have a book coming out called Unlocked, and so I've created a phone call with freedom to correlate with that book. So every episode, we talk about a chapter of the book. I have a bunch of index cards here with a chapter on each index card. I just kind of shuffle the index cards around and randomly pick one. So let's see what the topic for this week is going to be. Interesting. We would get this one. Anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression. What a great topic. Okay, everything that I talk about in the book, I will never profess that I'm right. I will say that we're on a ball floating in space, and your mind is going to create a construct. The question becomes, when you're going through a severe moment or a hard time to get through, what kind of construct does your mind create? What is your belief structure about what's happening? And do you trust it? As I look over at my clock, it's 11:11. I'm going to absorb those energies. So the question is, when you're going through a hard time, do you trust it? Do you trust what's happening? Do you believe that things are shifting because you're being aligned with something that's of a higher good for you, for everybody you're around, for the collective in general? Or do you believe that you're just at the fate of the universe and things are falling apart? For me, I'm a very happy person because I've worked the last 6 years to decondition my mind. I've built new relationships with all of my emotions. So that really helps me to be able to stay happier, because judgment's in its rightful seat, fear is in its rightful seat, right? So happiness is back up front. Like I've worked tirelessly to get my emotions back into check. It was pretty interesting because throughout my journey, what I discovered during the deconditioning process was that I eliminated what anxiety and depression I did have. When I was growing up, I had chapters of like, what is going on? And it threw me into this, nervous to go out, nervous to see anybody. I didn't want to walk into the store. I'd be like, send my sisters or send my mom. Like, I didn't want to go in. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to join clubs because I had this weird anxiety about being around other people. As I got older and my father fell ill, I was thrown into a space of being forced to rebuild new connections with my emotions. And that was where I started understanding that the mind's conditioned. It's conditioned to see things from a very particular perspective. And a lot of times that perspective that we view things from actually causes anxiety or depression. So it's not necessarily that we're broken or that we have a problem or that we're anxious or we're depressed. It's the programming of the mind, and the way it's been conditioned to see things is through a perspective that works hand in hand with anxiety and depression. If you had an entirely different belief structure, then you might not have anxiety, because you would understand and believe things that would serve you getting through these experiences, especially the ones that trigger up high anxiety or high depression. When my father was dying, I slipped into this space of severe depression, but I had to keep going because he was the one that was dying, right? So I had to work through it. I didn't have a chance to stop in it, which was a beautiful thing. I feel very blessed that my circumstance forced me. But during that time frame, when I went into it, I was a mess. And then as I had to recalibrate my relationship with my emotions, things started to change. I started believing different things. I started questioning. Like, for example, I knew my father was on a timeline. I knew he was dying. I wasn't naive to the situation, but at the same time, my thought was, here I am, upset, and yet this man is losing all of his abilities one by one. So I was conditioned to take advantage of the little things, to not even focus on the little things like having a meal or being able to walk. My mind was conditioned to focus on other things, things that created anxiety, things that people can take from you, things that aren't real, things that aren't substantial to your growth, really. So my whole life I had spent focusing on a desired outcome that you're never really going to meet, because this desired outcome is a flawed concept that you're going to work your ass off. And one day you're going to get to a point in life where everything's just great because now you've put in all the work, and then you're never going to have a hard day in your life. That's what people aim for, or they aim for something like financial freedom, right? Or they need to have a career because they want to own a home. They want to have a mortgage, which mortgage, by the way, morgue. Okay, you're not designed to stay in the same spot for 40, 50 years. If you want to, absolutely. But you're not designed to have to do that. So there's a lot of constructs that we all participate in that actually work against our survival. Once my father started dying, I was able to see the conditioning of my mind, because I thought to myself, there was one time, I talk about this if you're familiar with my work, there was one time where I was in the hospital. I would go up every weekend and stay with my dad. And he was really sick on this particular weekend, so I really didn't leave the room. I think I hit the vending machine once, and the nurses noted that, so they brought me up food. And at this point, we knew my dad was never going to be able to eat again. So they brought me in food, and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. How sweet, you know. And I start like chopping up my food, and I'm totally in my head. Totally in my head, thinking about shit that just does not matter. And you know when somebody's looking at you and you like shoot up? My dad's looking at me. And my head, I shoot up and I see him and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to take this. I'm going to take this down the hall. I'm so sorry, you know. And he's like, no, it's fine. You can eat it here. I just was thinking about what I would give to have one meal. And it was like in that moment for me, something snapped together. It was just like, I'm sitting here worried about what, having to take a 2-hour ride home. This man's dying. I'm worried about the bills or the house. He's never going to be able to walk again. He's never going to be able to eat again. And it just got me thinking about the conditioning of the mind and how we wake up, and a lot of times our minds will naturally go into what happened already or what's not working. We immediately pull the past into the future. And so I really started studying modern day science. My whole ride home that night, I had a deep conversation with myself. Because I wasn't mad at myself, because I knew that I was conditioned to think about and to focus on and to think about the things that don't primarily matter. It was just such an eye-opening moment of my life that I will never forget. It was really that moment that threw me into the study of modern day science and understanding how the mind worked. And my thought was, if we wake up in the morning and the mind naturally goes into a state of the past or a state of what's not working, if we come up against an experience or a moment and the mind naturally goes into victim mode, or I can't believe this is happening to me, It's so easy for the mind to go into spaces that are dark. And my question was, is that reversible? And can we apply the same concept, except take the mind from a place that's dark and put it into a place that's light? Can we recondition the mind? Is the mind programmable? And if so, can we recondition it to naturally go toward the positive? So that when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking of everything great that happened yesterday, and I'm excited for what's going to happen today, rather than thinking about everything that went wrong yesterday and being disappointed, expecting it to unfold the same today. So that became my mission here. It was, how does the mind truly work? The reason I started inviting in the idea of it being conditioned is because we naturally go to the negatives. And if you take a look at society, it's filled with negativity. I mean, even Instagram, I don't know what's going on, but every time I open my Instagram, it's like porn. And like, not for nothing, but I've been using the app less and less and less because of that. I'm not okay with that. Clearly, there's some type of agenda or energy, whatever you want to call it, but there's something out there that's promoting keeping your mind in a space of anxiety and depression, in a space of darkness, in a space of confusion. So my mission became, what does that process look like to recalibrate the mind so that when you come up against an event in your life, you can navigate it. You're never going to get rid of the ups and the downs. You're always going to have the ups and the downs. That's how this world works. It works in cycles. Everything around us tells us that, right? Look at the seasons, the sun and the moon. The moon alone has cycles throughout the month, right? So you're always going to have your ups and the downs. But when you have a belief structure that supports your experience, your downs become more exhilarating than they do painful. And your anxiety and your depression lessen and lessen. I truly believe that anxiety and depression is a result of having a conditioned belief structure within your mind that does not serve your survival. Your mind has been programmed to focus on a specific vibratory level every day, and your soul is fighting for your freedom from that. So that's where the anxiety and the depression come from. There's a part of you that knows there's more. There's another part of you that feels so lost because the mind's conditioned to see things from a very particular perspective, which emulates at a very particular vibration, which for me was a lower vibration. I had forgotten about all the beautiful things of life because I was conditioned to not even see them. I was conditioned to see and focus and look at what wasn't working. And therefore, I would think about that. And then you have a feeling behind it, right? That's your point of manifestation. So if your mind was hijacked and created to think and see things from a lower vibration, and then you come up against an experience, you're going to see it from a lower vibration, you're going to feel it from a lower vibration, and that's your point of manifestation. So now you're emulating these energies, creating that reality, creating more of that experience, simply because we lack the awareness of how the mind works. So I don't think that anxiety and depression is something that you just have. I don't think there's no rhyme or reason to it. I think it's a result of the mind being conditioned to believe things that your soul knows is not accurate. And that's the inner battle. When I'm talking about believing things that your soul knows is not the truth, I'm going to give you an example of that. Death is a big topic that we all have to deal with, something that every single one of us go through. When you're in the hospital or you get that call that that loved one has crossed over, in that moment, what do you believe? What do you truly believe? And not just surface level, like, well, no, what do you believe has happened next to that individual or that person that you love so dearly? When I first went into this with my father, my true belief was that I had no answers. and that and that hopefully he did okay so that he gets into the pearly gates. Otherwise he could be doomed. And what I realized within his unique situation, it was 13 years of survival. So it was very, hey, you got to get down here. He's not going to make it. And then I'd get down there and then a miracle would happen and he would survive. So it was very like losing him over and over and over again, ripping a Band-Aid off over and over and over again. In that space, though, I learned some of the most valuable lessons of my life. For example, the conditioning of the mind. I also discovered while I was there, I knew that he was dying. I wasn't naive to the situation. I knew that he was crossing over. But what I discovered was that the belief that I didn't know what was going to happen next, the belief that I had no answers, that I wasn't worthy enough to have answers, the belief that I was just thrown down here for no rhyme or reason, that belief was not helping me to survive the situation. It was creating anxiety and depression even deeper within the situation because that was my belief. I was programmed to look at things from a lower vibrational perspective. So here I'm going through the situation, and of course, I'm like, I'm the victim. My father's dying. My parents were divorced. My dad was adopted. It was just him and I. My 18th birthday, I became his power of attorney. I didn't even know how to take care of my own shit. So I was in this space of my whole life is falling apart. And on top of it, I'm watching my dad die. And I was very close to my dad. So this was how I saw things. And then I remember being in the shower one night. This was like years into it now. I had an apartment. My father was living with me. I was caretaking for him. He had been medevaced 4 times. And that last time he got medevaced, I was in the shower and I'm in my head and I was like, why is this happening to me? Why do I have to see this stuff over and over and over again? I gained an appreciation for instantaneous death. And I heard clear as day, you cannot think that this is happening to you. You have to think this is happening for you. This is not happening to you. This is happening for you. Now, even when you say that, when you're having an experience and you say to your mind, I can't believe this is happening to me, you emulate a very particular vibration. Now, if you can put yourself in a different spot and say, for some reason, this is happening for me. I don't know why. I don't know how. But I have to believe that because that's going to aid that outcome. This is happening for me. Boom. You change the vibration you emulate. That simple thought of this is happening to me to this is happening for me changes the entire frequency that you emulate. So imagine if you took your mind back. Imagine if every time you went through a situation or a circumstance, you were able to play with your perspective. Pick a perspective that served you and whoever else is involved. I'm not saying you're going to get rid of the negative times because you're not. Like I said, everything has a cycle. But if you have a belief structure that serves you, then you'll be able to navigate it. By the time my father had crossed over, I fully believed that we were multidimensional. I had decided to fully entertain the idea that there's more than one version of us within the universe, that there's more than one world, that there's thousands of experiences out there, and that there's versions of myself having these experiences. And even at a higher level, there's a version of myself that knows about what all my other little selves are doing. All right, that's what I refer to as my highest self. So I was in a space where I was broken so badly about the situation that was going on. The only way that I was going to survive that was by picking my mind apart and picking apart everything that I had been taught to believe and putting it back together in a fashion that served me. So when I went into it, I thought I was alone in the universe and we had no answers and we were the only intelligent beings in the galaxy. By the time I came out of the circumstance, I had reconditioned my entire mind and I had reclaimed my name within the universal structure. My identity as a galactic citizen. I'm not alone. I'm not a victim. I've been able to reprogram my mind, retrain my mind. And throughout that process, I went from having and experiencing severe anxiety and depression in moments of my life to really being pretty happy. I mean, like I said, there are ups and downs, but even in my down moments, I still don't feel alone because my higher self is there. I still fully trust that whatever I'm going through is happening for me. So there are certain things now that my mind has been reconditioned to believe at the core of myself. And I'll tell you, when you're going through something serious, it's a game changer. The conditioning of the mind is either going to make or break your experience of Earth. I think a lot of people are moving from a lack of awareness because they don't understand how the mind works. They don't understand the conditioning of the mind. There's a lot to pick apart there, but there are some beautiful, beautiful people, hundreds and thousands of us now, that are saying, hey, I think we're catching on to the idea that something is wrong with what we're doing, and we have to begin entertaining this idea that the mind's conditioned, and can we pick that conditioning apart? And if it is accurate that the mind's conditioned, how can we recondition it so that instead of waking up and going to the negatives, we're naturally waking up and going to the positives? Like, you don't even have to think about it. You just wake up and you go to the positives, right? And we can even do that for things as simple as habits. If you want to drink more water, let's say you're struggling with drinking water, but a goal of yours is to consume more. This was something I personally went through. In the beginning, there was a belief actually working against me within my mind that I didn't deserve emotional bliss. I wasn't good enough to have that. It was something that I was conditioned with, a belief through society. So what was interesting was the manifested form of it was my consumption of water. It all starts in the energy field first. It all starts in your mind. So it started with this idea of I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough. And so that the manifested form of that was the struggle I had with drinking water. I wanted to consume more water than what I was, and I was really struggling with that. And water is key. So I was like, wait a minute, I can't just be like, oh, okay, I'm fine with 4 or 5 glasses of water a day. Like, I'm ascending, you know, I want to ascend. I want to become a different person. I want to get into a different space. What I started doing was focusing on the conditioning of the mind. What belief was prohibiting me from moving forward? Once I was able to get into that core belief, and I realized that I didn't think that I was capable of emotional bliss. I certainly didn't think that I was worth it. You know, the whole world, your whole life kind of treats you like you're a speck. You're something small. You only deserve a little bit. And that's deeply ingrained, especially if you implement the idea of reincarnation. And that is really ingrained. So a lot of us are cutting some ties this lifetime, and it is not an easy lifetime because we're closing out every other lifetime we've been through in order to start fresh. Once I was able to get into that core belief and start filling myself up with this idea, filling myself up, right? Once I started filling myself up with this new belief, this new idea that I was valuable, I was capable, and this was the lifetime that we're going to be doing this in, then drinking water became more natural to me. It was like no problem. I started rewiring the subconscious to believe that I was worthy of the emotional bliss that I was chasing after. And as a result, I started drinking water unconsciously. I would just walk into a store and the first thing I would get was a water bottle. I'm always getting a water bottle. I'd walk into work and boom, I'd fill up my water bottle. And I would be doing this stuff unconsciously. Whereas before it was like I had to pull myself just to get 5 or 6 glasses of water a day. And now it was so in the ebb and flow because I was able to rewire the subconscious mind with different beliefs that served my survival. And that had a massive impact on my external reality. So anxiety and depression really, I truly believe, is a result of the conditioned mind believing things that are not in alignment with your higher soul. And your soul knows this. Your soul is always going to fight for your freedom. So if your mind is conditioned to see things from a very particular fashion, let's say it's a lower vibrational fashion, right, that you've been conditioned to see things from, you come up against any type of circumstance, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to see it from a lower vibration. You're not even going to sift through what could have happened or is there a deeper meaning. You're going to see it the way that you were taught to see it, and you're going to make a belief based on the perspective that you've picked on the situation, right? Now, let's say that belief is that you're a victim to the situation. Does that serve you? Do you feel good? And maybe you were a victim to the situation. Maybe you were still, I'm not saying that you weren't a victim to the situation. Maybe there was something that you went through. That person was dead ass wrong. You were right. And you were a victim to that situation. But I've worked with many people where we've done past life regression and played with the idea of karma from previous lifetimes. One of the biggest beliefs that you're going to have to pick apart is reincarnation. Everybody has played both light and dark. It's just a part of becoming a whole soul. You got to be the bad guy, you got to be the good guy, and you got to experience what the bad guy feels, and you got to experience what the good guy feels. That's a whole soul. So a lot of times people will go through these circumstances with other people, and they fall victim to them, and they don't clear the energy out by the end of the lifetime because they fell victim to the perspective. They didn't want to expand or play with the idea of an alternative, which would have helped them eliminate this feeling of, I have no control. It was out of my hands, which helps you eliminate the anxiety and depression as well. So really, it all comes down to the conditioning of the mind. At the end of the day, your soul is fighting for your freedom. Your soul is fighting for you to be able to reprogram the mind so that you can feel free and think free and be reconnected with that higher version of yourself. And when you're not, and you just choose to see things every day and try to get through the hustle and bustle of the daily routine, you decide not to go into those deeper spaces about what is this world? How does it work? Then that's going to be an experience that you have. And there's no judgment on that. But I don't think you can climb your way out of it without looking for another perspective. And for me, I certainly wouldn't have been able to climb my way out of the way that I was conditioned to see and do things if I didn't understand that the mind was programmed. So modern day science really comes in for the win here at the end of the day. If you want to get rid of your anxiety and depression, then we have to look at some of the deeper chapters that you've been through in your life. We have to kind of pick them apart and let go of the faces and the circumstances in which they've showed up, and just look at the energy behind them and sit with that energy for a little bit and try to figure out, where is that energy coming from? Why is that in your field? How can we eliminate that from your field and replace it with something that serves you? That's the whole objective here. And reconditioning the mind simultaneous to healing the energy field, you're going to provide results in your external reality without a doubt. And like I said, easy and effortless. Like now I'm drinking a gallon of water a day. Like it's nothing. It's crazy. And I didn't even think about it. I just wake up in the morning and fill the water bottle up. It's like so easy now. It was such a struggle to me. So right now, a lot of people are struggling in life, but it can become easy. But we have to go through the reprogramming process, and we have to begin inviting in the idea of energy and vibration and the awareness of how this works and how it correlates with the human body as well as your external reality. So there's a lot to pick apart there. I think overall what I want you to take with you is that if you feel that you have anxiety or depression, it is not because you are broken. It is not because you are flawed. You are beautiful in every way. It is because you have beliefs that do not support your survival. It's because there's another belief structure out there. It's because your soul is fighting for you to decondition the mind. And the soul will not stop fighting. The soul will never let the space that you're in be okay, because it's not okay. And your soul will never give up on you. Your higher self will never give up on you. So it's not because you're flawed. It's not because you're broken. You are beautiful. You've always been beautiful. It's because of the lack of information that we move from. Creates a lower vibration, and that surfaces like anxiety and depression. All right, so I hope that this helped to give a little bit of clarity based off the information that I've discovered along my journey and how I've been able to implement this awareness into my life and use it for the better to change my mental thoughts, my emotional space that I'm in, and my external reality for the better. Again, I will never say that I'm right or wrong, but what I will say is we are on a ball floating in space, and your mind is going to come up with a construct. Does that construct offer you peace or suffering? It's the construct within the mind that needs our attention and our focus. If we can give our attention and our focus to the construct and the conditioning and the programming of the mind, recondition it, reprogram, create a new construct that is going to serve you a perspective that you will naturally see things through, a more elevated perspective, a higher belief about yourself, about this world, about what happens after this world, about karma, about dharma, all this stuff. These are things that you have to know about if you want to create a happy, healthy lifestyle for yourself. If you implement all this, recondition the mind, you will absolutely eliminate your anxiety and depression. Like I said, you will still have ups and down days, but the downs almost become exhilarating in some way, shape, and form. Because now you know there's something much bigger that you're participating in, right? So I hope that this assisted in bringing you some clarity. I love you. I support you. Thank you so much for loving and supporting me. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Keeps me moving in the right direction. And then I'll be back Monday for another Read with SJ, Tuesday for the Process podcast. If you haven't checked that one out, make sure you do, because that one's a little less structured and it's just more me hopping on like, you won't believe what the happened this week. Just working with everybody, right, on the daily process of how to get through life. And then hop back on next Wednesday for another phone call with freedom. You can also hop onto my website at innersarah, INNERSARAH.com. Subscribe that way so that you get notified when my book is released. I love you guys. I support you. Thank you so much for loving and supporting me. Namaste, and I will see you sooner than later.